Lockhart, to be followed by Ivan McKee.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I begin by referring to my register of interest in connection with a smart meter business in England. This debate deals with one of the most pressing and critical challenges facing this generation and future ones: how to address climate change by transitioning to a carbon-neutral economy and society. Our amendment to the Green motion today highlights the increasing recognition in Scotland and across the world that future economic growth must be aligned with environmental protection and tackling climate change. As other members have said, business as usual is no longer viable. Here in Scotland, while significant, I'm sorry, Mr Whiteman, I've only got 4 minutes. I've got quite a lot to cover. Here in Scotland, we have made significant progress. Emissions are down 49% in the last 30 years, but progress has been mixed over sectors and more robust action is required to deliver the transition. Whether we call this transition delivery mechanism a new Green Deal or otherwise, the transition to a carbon-neutral economy will require a whole-of-government approach. It will require investments of unprecedented scale, a fundamental review of the skills and training necessary for the future workforce, a balance between energy security and energy costs, and that transition must be delivered in a structured, coordinated and just manner so that no one is left behind. The reality is, Presiding Officer, there are already in place a number of delivery mechanisms that can help achieve these outcomes. The UK Government's industrial strategy has made clean growth a central part of its sustainable economic policy. It provides the massive scale of investment required to support the transition, with £37 billion of investment available to promote sustainable economic growth. This includes £2.5 billion to invest in low-carbon innovation, the announcement of a new offshore wind sector deal, plans to make the UK the global leader for green finance to support clean growth, and as a result, the low-carbon economy in the UK is expected to grow by 11% each year in the next decade. And we want Scotland to benefit from this low-carbon growth, and that's why we repeatedly call on the Scottish Government to work closely with the UK Government to make sure that Scottish business can capitalise on those low-carbon opportunities. The Scottish Government itself can progress the transition by introducing a dedicated circular economy strategy for Scotland. Maurice Golden, in his opening remarks, referred to an ambitious programme that could create 40,000 jobs if the Scottish Government were to embed this in all portfolio areas. This would include the creation of new institutions like the Institute of Reuse, microplastic recycling facilities and promote best practice across Scotland. So we would encourage the Scottish Government to follow our policy recommendations in this area. Another delivery mechanism other members have spoken about is the Scottish National Investment Bank, and we agree in principle that should be focused on the transition, but all of the projects must be evidence-based to ensure that projects are viable and sustainable. We cannot repeat the mistakes of the recent past, where £40 million of taxpayers' money was lost on failed investments such as Palamis and Aquamarine. That cannot be the focus of the bank going forward. Finally, the Scottish Government's own climate change plans must also play an important part in the transition. However, these plans will need to address the concerns raised by witnesses in the Economy Committee who raised concerns that the plans can't simply be wishful thinking, but they must be backed up by credible policies, resources and more specific targets. Presiding Officer, all of these policy platforms can help achieve the outcome of a carbon-neutral Scotland. But policy in this area will have to be prioritised. It will have to be implemented through a whole-of-government approach. Unfortunately, as we heard earlier today from the First Minister, the priorities of this Scottish Government are focused elsewhere and are not focused on climate change, sustainable economic growth or training the workforce of the future.
Well done.
I support the amendment in Maurice Golden's name.
Thank you very much.